Have you ever experienced the heart-wrenching feeling of your children drifting away from you? The overwhelming sadness that comes with being ignored or, even worse, feeling like your children no longer respect you? It's a deep, painful experience, especially for those of us who have dedicated our entire lives to raising our children with love, care, and sacrifice. You poured your heart and soul into helping them grow, guiding them through every stage of life. And yet, at some point, you find yourself asking, why is this happening? Where did I go wrong? As difficult as it is, I'm here to tell you that reacting with anger or letting sadness consume you will not help. It might feel natural to lash out or wallow in hurt, but those responses often only push your children further away and create more emotional distance. What if there was another way? A way to regain your peace, preserve your dignity, and rebuild your relationship with your children without fueling conflict? That's exactly what we're going to explore in today's video. If you've been struggling with feelings of neglect, confusion, or hurt, know that you are not alone. In this video, I'm going to share with you 8 powerful actions, real-life stories, practical advice, and time-tested strategies that can help you repair those broken connections with your children. These aren't just abstract ideas. They are steps that have transformed countless relationships, helping parents like you regain the respect and love they deserve. Whether you're facing emotional distance or outright disrespect from your children, the strategies I'll share will give you the tools you need to approach the situation with wisdom, clarity, and calm. It's time to take control of the situation and find a path that works for you. No more feeling helpless or desperate. This video will empower you to rebuild the relationship on your terms, bringing you the peace of mind and self-respect that you deserve. And there's more. Not only will we focus on repairing your relationship with your children, but we'll also talk about how you can reclaim your independence, your self-respect, and your happiness, regardless of what's going on with your family dynamic. It's not about waiting for your children to change. It's about changing how you approach the situation. If you want to learn how to set healthy boundaries, lead by example, and create happiness, you are in the right place. Stick with me until the end, and I'll show you the exact steps that will help you approach your relationships in a whole new light. One that may even help your children see you in a new way. But before we dive into all that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and don't forget to activate the notification bell so you never miss another video. Your support means the world to me. And if you found value in this video, please consider liking and sharing it to help others who may be going through something similar. Your support helps me continue to create content that makes a difference. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. If this topic resonates with you, please drop a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to leave a 0 and share any feedback on how I can improve and make these videos even more helpful for you. Now, let's dive right in. Advice number 1. Don't react with anger. Pause and reflect. Feeling disrespected by the very children you've raised with love and care can be one of the most painful experiences. It's a deep, emotional wound. After all, you've dedicated years of your life to guiding and supporting them, and now it feels as though they've pulled away or forgotten all that you've done. It's natural to feel hurt and want to lash out, to say, "How could you treat me like this after everything I've done for you?" But I'm here to tell you, acting on that anger won't help. It will likely drive them further away and escalate the situation, making things even worse. Instead of reacting impulsively, take a moment to pause and reflect. When we're hurt or frustrated, our emotions can cloud our judgment. But if we let anger take control, we risk losing the very respect we want to regain. Take a moment to breathe deeply. Step away from the situation. Sometimes, that moment of pause is all it takes to give you the clarity to approach things from a place of strength, not anger. Let me share a story with you to illustrate this point. Meet Tom Miller, a retired teacher in his early 70s. Tom had always been dedicated to his family, having spent years as a high school history teacher, shaping the minds of young students and caring for his children. But as the years went by, his children's visits became less frequent, and when they did visit, the conversations were brief and distant. He could feel the emotional distance growing, and it hurt. One day, after another phone call went unanswered, Tom felt his frustration boil over. "Don't they care about me at all?" he thought. The old familiar feelings of abandonment began to creep in. But instead of giving in to his anger, Tom decided to go for a walk in the park. As he walked among the trees, he allowed his mind to wander back through the years, recalling the joy of teaching, the sacrifices he made for his family, and the pride he felt in watching his children grow. That moment of quiet reflection helped Tom realize something crucial. His worth wasn't tied to his children's actions or their level of communication. It was rooted in the life he had lived, the love he had given, and the kindness he had shown others. His dignity was his to keep, no matter how distant his children had become. Tom's story holds an important lesson for all of us. Emotional reactions, especially ones fueled by anger, rarely lead to positive outcomes. When we lash out, we don't gain respect, we lose it. So, the next time you feel hurt or disrespected by your children, instead of reacting impulsively, take a step back. Breathe deeply, reflect on your life, and remind yourself of your worth. You may find that the situation becomes clearer, and you can respond with a stronger sense of self-respect and dignity. This will not only improve your emotional well-being but also set the stage for better communication and, over time, a restored relationship. Remember this key point: dignity comes from within. It isn't dependent on the approval or actions of others. Quiet reflection, not anger, is the path to true clarity and understanding. Advice number 2. Rebuild your life. Find a new purpose. When you feel ignored by your children, it can feel like you're drifting into an emotional void, waiting for their attention or validation. It's natural to feel devastated and lost in those moments, but here's a truth that can transform your situation. The most powerful thing you can do is focus on yourself. Instead of waiting for your children to reach out, start rebuilding your life by finding a new purpose. This isn't about rejecting them, it's about taking control of your happiness. When you begin to live a fulfilling life, your energy will change, and others will naturally take notice. You become a parent who radiates joy, confidence, and independence, qualities that are much harder to ignore. When you focus on your well-being and growth, you stop being the person who is waiting for someone else's attention, and instead, you become someone others are drawn to. That energy shift can work wonders, especially in your relationships with your children. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Let me share the story of Margaret Thompson, a widow in her late 60s. After her husband passed away, Margaret found herself in a deep emotional slump. Her children, who had once visited regularly, began calling less and visiting even less. Over time, their phone calls became shorter, and eventually, they stopped altogether. Margaret was devastated. She spent countless days sitting by the phone, hoping for a call, waiting for some sign that her children still cared. It was as though the life she had once known had faded, and she was left with an empty silence. But one day, Margaret decided that enough was enough. She was tired of waiting. Instead of continuing to dwell on her loneliness, she decided to invest in herself. She took a packet of seeds, walked out into her backyard, and began planting a garden. At first, it was just a small, simple hobby to pass the time. But over the following months, gardening became her passion. Margaret joined a local gardening club and made new friends who shared her love for plants. She even began sharing her harvest with her neighbors, bringing fresh vegetables and flowers to their homes. As Margaret immersed herself in her garden and community, something incredible happened. Her life began to transform. She became happier, more active, and more connected with those around her. She wasn't waiting for her children anymore. She was living a rich and meaningful life on her terms. One day, her daughter called out of the blue. "Mom, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. You sound so happy. What's your secret?" That phone call sparked something beautiful. a renewed connection between them. The next time they spoke, the conversation was longer, deeper, and more heartfelt. Margaret's story is a powerful reminder of this simple truth. A parent who leads a fulfilling life is much harder to ignore. When you find a new purpose, whether through hobbies, volunteering, or just rediscovering passions you'd long forgotten, you shift the energy around you. This shift not only brings you inner peace, but can also rekindle the admiration and respect of your children. They no longer see you as someone who is waiting for their attention, but as someone who is living fully, joyfully, and independently. So, instead of waiting for your children to come back into your life, begin investing in yourself. Pursue hobbies, join local groups, or become involved in your community. The happiness and fulfillment you create within yourself will not only bring you peace, but it may also open the door for your children to reconnect. By showing them that you are living a meaningful life, you may inspire them to rediscover the importance of their relationship with you. Advice number 3. Communicate your feelings wisely. When your children seem distant or even outright disrespectful, it's easy to let frustration take over. You might feel like shouting, "Why don't you ever call me? Don't you care about me at all?" The hurt and confusion can build up, and before you know it, you're on the verge of confronting them with all your pent-up emotions. But here's the reality. Harsh words often lead to defensiveness and make the emotional gap between you and your children even wider. What you need most in those moments isn't to lash out. It's to communicate your feelings in a way that opens the door for connection, not conflict. The key is to express yourself in a gentle, sincere way. When you approach the situation calmly and without blame, you create space for understanding, and that's where healing begins. Let me tell you about the story of John Peterson, a retired carpenter in his 70s, to illustrate this. John hadn't heard from his son, James, in months. The silence between them was deafening. Every day, John would sit by his window, looking out of the driveway, hoping to see his son's car pull in. But day after day, it didn't happen. The loneliness and hurt became overwhelming, and John often thought about calling James, demanding an explanation for his absence. Why hasn't he called? Does he even care about me anymore? He wondered. But instead of letting his anger drive the conversation, John decided to take a different route. Instead of making that angry call, John sat down at his kitchen table, took out a piece of paper, and wrote a heartfelt letter. He poured his emotions onto the page without placing blame. He wrote, "James, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I miss our conversations and hearing about your life. I just want you to know that I'm always here for you, and I'm proud of you, no matter what." It wasn't an accusation or an angry outburst. It was a simple, sincere expression of his feelings. A few days later, the phone rang. It was James. He told his father that the letter had reached him. James admitted that he had been caught up with work and family life, but he hadn't realized how much he had missed his dad. That letter sparked a deeper conversation between them and led to regular phone calls and weekend visits, something that hadn't happened in years. John's story illustrates a key lesson. When you communicate your feelings wisely, without blame or reproach, you invite connection, not conflict. Instead of accusing your children, try saying, "I miss spending time with you," or "I've been thinking about you a lot lately." Phrases like these open up a space for understanding, while accusations often close that door. Your words have the power to heal or hurt. The way you choose to communicate can either push your children away or bring them closer. So, the next time you feel frustrated or hurt, take a step back and think about how you can express your feelings in a way that fosters connection. When you choose your words carefully, you open the door to understanding, healing, and possibly even a restored relationship. Advice number 4. Set healthy boundaries. Respect is a two-way street. We often think about what we need from others, especially our children, but it's just as important to consider what we need to give ourselves. Respect. As much as you want your children to treat you with kindness and consideration, you must respect yourself enough to set boundaries. If you allow disrespect to continue unchecked, you're sending the message that you're willing to tolerate harmful behavior, and that can create a pattern of emotional exhaustion. Setting boundaries isn't just about protecting your peace of mind. It's also about teaching others how to treat you. When you stand up for yourself, you model self-respect and self-care. Let me tell you the story of Grace Adams, a retired nurse in her 70s, who learned this lesson the hard way. For years, Grace had been there for her son, Daniel, in every way imaginable. At first, Daniel would visit regularly, but over time, his visits became more infrequent and mostly focused on asking for favors. Whether it was financial help, a last-minute babysitting request, or emotional venting sessions, Daniel always knew his mother would drop everything to help. Grace loved her son deeply and wanted to make him feel supported, but over time, she noticed that his visits were no longer about love or connection. They were about his needs, and he often seemed oblivious to hers. One day, after Daniel called and asked her to watch his kids for the umpteenth time without any advance notice, Grace realized that this pattern was becoming too much. He hadn't even asked how she was doing, nor had he shown any appreciation. That was the tipping point. Grace decided it was time to set a boundary. Instead of simply accepting, as she had done in the past, she said, "Daniel, I love you, but I'm not available today. I've made plans for myself." At first, Daniel was taken aback and even upset. He wasn't used to hearing no from his mother. But Grace stood her ground. She stopped giving in to every request, and instead, she began focusing on her well-being. She joined a local book club, took up yoga classes, and reconnected with friends she hadn't seen in years. She invested in herself, building a life that brought her peace and fulfillment. Over time, Daniel began to notice the shift. He saw that his mother wasn't always waiting by the phone or rearranging her life to meet his needs. Her newfound sense of independence and self-respect changed how he saw her. He realized that his behavior had been selfish and that his mother's needs were just as important as his own. He started treating her with more respect, understanding that boundaries were not an act of rejection but a healthy way to maintain a strong, loving relationship. Grace's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Respect must be mutual. You deserve to be treated with kindness and consideration, but that starts with how you treat yourself. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing your children away or cutting them off. It's about valuing your own time, energy, and emotional health. When you respect yourself, others will begin to follow your example, and your relationships will flourish because of it. Advice number 5. Lead by example. It's easy to expect respect from others, especially from our children. But the truth is, respect isn't something we can demand. It's something we must earn, often through our options. If you want your children to treat you with respect, the first step is to show them what respect looks like. Your words, your actions, and how you treat others, including your children, can have a profound impact on how they behave toward you. When you lead by example, you silently teach those around you how to respond, and you show them the power of dignity and kindness. Let's take a look at the story of Charles Harrison, a retired factory worker and grandfather of 5. As Charles grew older, he began to notice a shift in his relationship with his adult children. Visits became less frequent, and when they did visit, they seemed distracted, often glued to their phones or rushing through their time together. It hurt him deeply to see that his once close-knit family now seemed so distant. But instead of reacting with anger or bitterness, Charles chose a different path. He decided to continue treating his children with the same respect and warmth he always had, even though they weren't showing the same in return. When his children would visit, Charles welcomed them with a heartfelt smile and said, "It's so good to see you." He never mentioned their long absences or criticized their distracted behavior. Instead, he asked them about their lives, listened attentively, and offered thoughtful advice when needed, never holding grudges, even when they forgot his birthday one year. Charles's quiet dignity and unwavering kindness were his greatest strengths. Over time, his children began to notice the difference. They started visiting him more often, calling him regularly, and even bringing their children to spend time with him. Charles's actions spoke louder than words ever could. His consistent respect, patience, and understanding gradually softened his children's hearts. They realized that their father's example was teaching them something profound, that respect is given, not demanded, and that it's never too late to rebuild connections. The key lesson here is simple. Respect is contagious. When you show respect to others, including your children, you plant a seed that will eventually grow. It may take time, but over time, your children will begin to reflect that same behavior toward you. Instead of demanding respect, embody it through your actions. Treat your children the way you want to be treated, and eventually, they will see the value in doing the same for you. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Charles's story reminds us that leading by example isn't just about teaching others how to behave. It's about living in a way that inspires the same behavior in those around you. The more you show kindness, patience, and respect, the more likely it is that your children will follow suit. And when they do, the bond between you will grow stronger, rooted in mutual respect and love. Advice number 6. Maintain financial independence. As you age, one of the best ways to maintain your children's respect and admiration is to remain financially independent. While it's natural to expect some support from your children as you get older, relying entirely on them for financial assistance can create unnecessary tension and resentment. Maintaining your financial independence doesn't just protect your peace of mind, it fosters a sense of respect from your children. When they see that you are capable of managing your affairs, they are more likely to view you as strong, self-sufficient, and someone they admire, rather than as someone who needs to be taken care of. Let me share the story of the Harrisons, a retired couple in their 70s, to illustrate the power of financial independence. After both Jack and Linda Harrison retired, they decided to downsize their home and simplify their lifestyle so they could live comfortably on their fixed pension income. Instead of relying on their children for financial help, they carefully planned their expenses, created a strict budget, and avoided unnecessary debt. They were determined to live independently, and their planning paid off. At first, their children didn't fully appreciate the effort and sacrifices Jack and Linda had made to ensure their financial independence. Their children were busy with their own lives and often didn't understand the level of discipline and planning required to live within their means. But over time, things began to shift. Jack and Linda never asked their children for money or assistance, and they never complained about their financial situation. They always seemed in control of their finances, no matter how fixed their income was. It was this quiet stability and self-sufficiency that caught their children's attention. Soon, their children began to notice something remarkable: their parents' ability to manage their finances without needing to rely on others. The Harrisons' financial independence became a source of pride, and it wasn't long before their children started coming to them for advice on budgeting and retirement planning. They realized that Jack and Linda had created a life of stability and independence, and they wanted to learn how to do the same for themselves. The key lesson here is clear. Financial independence sends a powerful message. It shows that you value your dignity, and it lets your children know that you won't become a burden to them. While it's important to accept help when you truly need it, maintaining control over your affairs as much as possible teaches your children that you are capable of living life on your terms. When your children see that you've taken responsibility for your own life and well-being, they will respect you for it. And when that respect is earned, it can lead to a deeper, more fulfilling relationship. They will be more likely to offer their love and support without feeling pressured or obligated. Advice number 7. Forgive, but don't forget your value. When your children choose to ignore you or show disrespect, forgiveness can feel like one of the most difficult yet powerful things you can offer. The emotional weight of resentment can be overwhelming. It can pull you down and keep you stuck in pain. But holding on to that hurt only prolongs your suffering. Forgiveness, however, offers you the opportunity to heal and move forward with peace in your heart. It's important to understand, though, that forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget your owl. You can forgive your children for their actions without letting their lack of respect define your worth. Your dignity and self-respect come from within, not from how others treat you. Let me share the story of Susan Parker, a retired artist and mother of two. Over the years, Susan's daughter, Claire, had become more and more distant. At first, Claire would call regularly, but as the years passed, the calls became less frequent, and the visits stopped altogether. Susan found herself wondering where she went wrong. Was it something she said or did? Was she not a good enough mother? The growing distance between them was painful, and Susan often felt like an afterthought in Claire's life. Eventually, Susan realized that holding on to anger wasn't helping anyone, not her or Claire. It was only keeping her trapped in feelings of bitterness. She decided it was time to forgive, not because Claire had apologized, but because Susan understood that forgiveness was a gift she was giving herself. She sat down and wrote a heartfelt letter to Claire. "I forgive you for the distance between us, and I will always love you." While forgiving her daughter was an important step, Susan also decided to reclaim her sense of dignity. She wasn't going to wait by the phone anymore or passively accept the emotional neglect. Instead, she picked up her paintbrushes and returned to her art, a hobby she had neglected for years. Susan joined a local art group, began exhibiting her paintings at community events, and rediscovered the joy that came from pursuing her passions. Months later, Claire visited Susan unexpectedly. She was taken aback by how happy and fulfilled her mother seemed. "Mom, you've started painting again? Why didn't you tell me?" Claire asked, genuinely moved by the artwork displayed in her home. Susan simply smiled and said, "I've been focusing on what brings me joy." That visit marked a turning point in their relationship. Claire began visiting her mother more often, not out of guilt, but because she admired Susan's quiet strength and newfound independence. Susan's decision to forgive and live for herself without waiting for her daughter's approval changed the dynamics between them. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The key lesson here is that forgiveness is a powerful gift you give to yourself, not to the person who hurt you. It doesn't mean you have to forget your worth. You deserve to be treated with respect, no matter the circumstances. So forgive the past, but never forget your value. Pursue your passions, live with dignity, and remember that your true value comes from within, regardless of how others treat you. Advice number 8. Build a new circle of companionship. Loneliness can be one of the most painful and isolating experiences, especially when it stems from feeling ignored or disrespected by your children. When you have no one else to turn to, you may find yourself depending on your children for emotional support, hoping they will fill that space. However, this kind of emotional dependence can quickly lead to frustration and resentment, particularly when your children can't, or don't, meet your needs. That's why it's so important to build a new circle of companionship filled with relationships that offer support, joy, and connection. By reaching out and cultivating bonds with friends, neighbors, or community members, you can reduce the pain of feeling neglected and create a fulfilling social life that nurtures your emotional well-being. Let's look at the story of Harold Jenkins, a widowed man in his 80s, who learned this lesson firsthand. For many years, Harold had relied on his son and daughter for companionship and emotional support. But as their lives became busier with work and their own families, their visits became shorter, and their calls became less frequent. Harold started to feel the weight of isolation, spending most of his days alone. While he loved his children deeply, their absence left a void that no phone call or quick visit could fill. One particularly lonely week, after days of silence and feeling disconnected, Harold decided to take action. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he joined a local senior citizens club in his community. He figured it might offer something to look forward to, even if it was just a change of scenery. To his surprise, Harold quickly made new friends. There was a weekly coffee gathering, a monthly book club, and even a walking group that met in the park. Slowly but surely, Harold found himself becoming more involved and engaged. These activities gave him a sense of purpose and connection that he hadn't realized he was missing. Soon, Harold's circle of friends became his safeguard. He began sharing laughter, standing, and even organizing small outings with his new friends. With each passing week, Harold started to feel less reliant on his children for emotional fulfillment. While he still loved them and missed their visits, he no longer felt a deep sense of emptiness when they were busy. Instead, he had a vibrant social life that filled that void and brought him joy. The key lesson here is clear. Loneliness can lead to emotional dependence, but a fulfilling, vibrant social life can fill that void. By building new relationships, you take the pressure off your children to meet all your emotional needs. This not only helps you rediscover joy and companionship, but also reduces feelings of resentment toward your children. In turn, it fosters healthier, more balanced relationships with them. When you stop expecting everything from your children, you free both yourself and them from unnecessary emotional strain, creating a space for mutual respect, understanding, and love. Thank you for watching and for joining me today. We've covered some truly powerful advice on how to rebuild relationships with your children, regain your dignity, and live with more peace and fulfillment. From learning to set healthy boundaries to leading by example and building a new circle of support, each of these steps can make a huge difference in how we approach our relationships and personal well-being. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What have you learned so far? What one thing from today's video do you feel inspired to practice in your own life? Please share it in the comments below. I'm excited to hear your thoughts and how you plan to take action. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any future content. Your support means the world to us. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.